Hey folks, so today we're going to have a short video about what's called the formless attainments and some ways that concentration meditation has changed in the modern world. Coming up. Hey folks, so I'm Doug Smith. I'm study director at the Secular Buddhist Association. That's secularbuddhism.org. And if you're interested in helping to try to make the world a kinder, a wiser, and a less stress-filled place, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll have videos like these out roughly once or twice a week. And if you're subscribed, then you'll certainly hear about them. So basically, in my last video, was a video about the last step along the Eightfold Path, which is right concentration. And I had a bunch of extra stuff at the end where I just sort of went on about stuff that wasn't directly involved with right concentration, but is other kinds of concentration that the Buddha discusses in the early texts, as well as some thoughts about the way that concentration meditation has developed in the last couple of centuries. Instead of packing that in with the other video, I decided to sort of split it off and make it its own video, basically. And it's not that long, but it sort of starts, obviously I cut it so it starts in the middle, or not in the middle, but it starts, sort of in the middle of where I was talking, and will end sort of in the middle of where I'm talking as well. Nevertheless, I think it makes its own package. So that's what's in store for now, and take it away, me. Now, there are also four what are called formless jhānas. These first four are called the form jhānas because they involve the body in one way or another. There are also what are called formless jhānas in the later tradition. In the early tradition, though, that I've been talking about, those formless jhānas aren't called jhānas at all. They're just called formless states. They're, again, deep states of samadhi, of calm. The first one is a state of infinite space, an awareness of the infinity of space around us. The second one would be infinite consciousness. It's this awareness of the consciousness of our minds that fills that infinite space as we're aware of it. The third one is infinite nothingness, awareness of the lack of any kind of blockage in that consciousness. And the fourth is neither perception nor non-perception, which is a very deep state. Now, the last two of these are supposed to be states that he learned from his teachers before he became enlightened. His last two meditation teachers, Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta. And he learned these states and then discarded them as being not helpful to reaching awakening. Nevertheless, they're deep states of samadhi. There is actually a 10th, which is the cessation of perception and feeling, which is basically a state of suspended animation. You're basically like you're dead, except that you're alive. I mean, you're not doing anything. It's a very weird state. It seems only to be achievable by people who are awakened. It may be a sort of a literary conceit, I don't know. In any event, these last 5 states that I've been discussing are not strictly jhanas. They're not part of right concentration, even though they are states of concentration that the Buddha apparently was able to achieve, and that sometimes are listed in the states that he achieved before attaining enlightenment or awakening. It's important to note, we've been discussing right concentration is the very last of the Eightfold Path, the very last stage in the Eightfold Path. And I think sometimes nowadays, especially with the rise of mindfulness meditation, these states are looked down upon, they're deprecated to an extent. Oftentimes people seem to believe that there's a problem with jhana because we can end up clinging to jhana. We can become jhana junkies, as they're called. People who basically look at jhana as an escape, look at jhana as a kind of a drug almost. In the early tradition, they were not looked upon badly. They were not looked upon as a problem. They were looked upon, as the Buddha said, after recalling his experience of the first jhana as a child, as being pure states of happiness. There wasn't anything wrong with them. They were not awakening. Of course, the only wrong thing about them would be if you mistook them for awakening. But so long as you understood that they were simply a stage, but an important one, then there was nothing particularly wrong about them. Now, historically, in the 19th century, people like Lady Sayadaw, who was a Burmese monk who was one of probably the founder of insight meditation, Vipassana. I have an earlier video about his role within contemporary secular Buddhism and insight Buddhism. He was one who really tried to I would say, not deprecate, but to put aside the jhanas. I think largely because he was looking towards a lay audience. And I think he was aware that lay people in their busy lives don't have the time to devote several hours a day to meditation in order to achieve jhana. He was aware also that in the early texts, there are some people who are said to have achieved what's called dry insight. That is, they were able to achieve awakening, a kind of insight, without the benefit of all of the jhanas. It's a controversy how many jhanas or what they were exactly able to achieve. Were they only able to achieve a kind of what's called access concentration, a deep concentration, but not quite even the first jhana? Or did they only achieve the first jhana, or what? But in any event, there are examples, or there's a few examples in the early texts of people who became awakened without necessarily achieving all the jhanas. So people like Lady Sayadaw took that and said, well, look, since jhanas are difficult for people nowadays, let's leave those aside. And I think that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think we should also be aware, if we're looking at these early texts and interested in what they tell us, that in the early texts, the jhana was thought of as really being useful. And perhaps, if not quite necessary, at least close to necessary. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. A little bit of a discussion of types of meditative concentration, the formless attainments, or as they were called later on, the formless jhanas, as well as some thoughts about the way that meditation, this kind of meditation, has developed more recently. So again, if you're new to the channel, thanks for being here. I'm really glad to see you here. If you've come back for more than once, then really nice to have you back. And stick around for other videos. Bye-bye.